Commander Jake Morrison stood at the big window of the space station called Galileo. He looked down at Earth and felt sick to his stomach. The planet that used to be blue and green and beautiful was now orange and red with fire. Smoke covered everything. The alien ships called Zephyrians had destroyed his home world in just 3 months. Jake had been born on Earth 35 years ago in a small town in Ohio. He remembered playing baseball, in green fields and swimming in clean lakes. Now all of that was gone. The Zephyrians had come from deep space with thousands of ships. They did not want to talk or make peace. They just wanted to kill everything. Behind Jake, a young woman named Lisa Hayes sat at the radio desk. She was only 22 years old, and this was her first job in space. Her hands shook as she worked with the radio equipment. She had family down on Earth and did not know if they were still alive. "Sir, I am getting a message from the planet," Lisa said. Her voice was very quiet. "It is coming from Colorado, where the emergency radio station is." Jake walked over to Lisa's desk. He knew this would probably be the last message anyone would ever send from Earth. The Zephyrians were very good at finding and destroying radio stations. But what he heard next surprised him very much. The voice that came through the radio was calm and happy. It belonged to Dr. Henry Chen, a scientist who studied aliens. Jake knew Dr. Chen from before the war. He was a smart man who always smiled and made jokes even when things were bad. "Hello to all humans in space and on other planets," Dr. Chen said through the static noise. "This is the last official message from Earth. We want to tell you something very important. We learned something amazing about the aliens who attacked us, something that changes everything we thought we knew about them and about ourselves." Then the radio went quiet. Nothing but static noise filled the air. Jake felt cold fear run through his body. The Zephyrians listened to all human radio messages. If they heard what Dr. Chen just said, they would hunt down every human colony in the galaxy. They would want to stop this information from spreading to other humans. "Lisa, get me Captain Rodriguez, who flies the ship called Wanderer," Jake said quickly. "And send a secret message to all human settlements. Use the most important emergency code we have." Lisa's fingers moved fast on her keyboard. She was scared, but she did her job well. "Sir, what should I tell them in the message?" Jake looked at Earth one more time. He could see big explosions happening on the surface. Cities were burning. Millions of people were dying. But somehow Dr. Chen had discovered something important before the end. "Tell them to get ready for war," Jake said. "Tell them that humanity just became something the galaxy has never seen before." The space station Galileo was not very big. It only had 50 people working on it. Most of them were scientists who studied space and planets. They never expected to be in a war, but now they were the only humans left near Earth who could warn the colonies. Jake thought about his wife and 2 children who lived on a planet called New Terra. They were safe for now, but that might change soon. The Zephyrians were very fast and very good at finding human planets. They had already destroyed 12 colonies in the past month. Dr. Peterson, an old scientist with gray hair, came up to Jake. "Commander, what do you think Dr. Chen discovered?" Jake shook his head. "I do not know, but it must be something big. Henry Chen was the smartest alien expert we had. If he said it changes everything, then it really does." Lisa looked up from her radio desk. "Sir, I am getting reports from other places. The Zephyrians are leaving Earth. Their big ships are moving away from the planet." This was very strange. The Zephyrians always stayed on a planet until every human was dead. They were very thorough and never left a job unfinished. But now they were leaving Earth while some humans might still be alive. "Maybe they heard Dr. Chen's message too," Dr. Peterson said. "Maybe they are scared of what he discovered." Jake nodded. "Lisa, try to contact any survivors on Earth. Maybe someone down there knows what Dr. Chen found out." For the next 2 hours, Lisa tried to reach anyone on Earth who might still be alive. She sent messages to underground bunkers, mountain hideouts, and remote research stations. Most of the time she got no answer. But finally a weak signal came through. "This is Dr. Amanda Wright at the Rocky Mountain Research Center," a woman's voice said. "I worked with Dr. Chen. I know what he discovered. You need to get me off this planet right away." Jake felt hope for the first time in months. "Dr. Wright, this is Commander Morrison on Station Galileo. What did Dr. Chen find out?" "I cannot say it on the radio," Dr. Wright replied. "The aliens might be listening. But I can tell you this much. The Zephyrians are not what we thought they were. They are not the real enemy. There is something else, something much bigger behind all of this." Jake made a quick decision. Dr. Wright, we are sending a rescue ship to get you. Stay hidden until we arrive. He turned to Dr. Peterson. Get me our fastest ship ready, and tell the pilot to be very careful. I have a feeling that Dr. Chen's discovery is going to change this war completely. As Jake looked out at the burning Earth one last time, he thought about what Dr. Wright had said. If the Zephyrians were not the real enemy, then who was? And what did this mean for all the humans scattered across the galaxy? The rescue mission would be dangerous. Earth was still surrounded by some Zephyrian ships, but Jake knew they had to take the risk. Whatever Dr. Chen had discovered might be the key to saving humanity from complete destruction. He watched as their small rescue ship left the station and headed toward Earth. In a few hours, they would either have the answers they needed, or they would be dead. But either way, Jake knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The war was about to take a turn that nobody expected. And somewhere in the burning ruins of Earth, the truth was waiting to be discovered. 3 weeks had passed since Earth died, and Captain Maria Santos was flying her cargo ship called Phoenix Rising toward Proxima Centauri. This was one of the biggest human colonies with almost 2 million people living there. Maria was bringing food and medicine to help the colonists prepare for war. But Maria was carrying something much more important than supplies in her ship. Hidden in a secret room behind the engine was Dr. Amanda Wright, the scientist who had worked with Dr. Chen on Earth. The rescue mission had been successful, but very dangerous. 5 Zephyrian ships had chased them through space for 2 days before they escaped. Dr. Wright was a thin woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had not slept well since leaving Earth. The things she had learned were so shocking that she could barely believe them herself, but she knew the information could save humanity or destroy them completely. When the Phoenix Rising landed on Proxima Centauri, Maria and Dr. Wright were met by Paul Johnson, the man who ran the colony. Paul was a big man with a gray beard who had been a soldier before becoming a leader. He looked worried when he saw Dr. Wright. "Doctor, we heard about Dr. Chen's message," Paul said as they walked to the government building. "What did you and he discover about the Zephyrians?" Dr. Wright waited until they were in a secure meeting room with 12 other colony leaders. Then she activated a small device that showed pictures in the air. The pictures showed cells and DNA patterns that looked very strange. "The Zephyrians made a big mistake," Dr. Wright said. "They thought humans were like every other race they had conquered before. They thought we would be peaceful and give up easily." Colony Administrator Susan Clark leaned forward in her chair. "What do you mean by that?" Dr. Wright showed more pictures on her device. These showed brain scans and genetic information. "I was part of Dr. Chen's research team. We managed to capture several Zephyrian soldiers before Earth was destroyed. What we found when we studied them was completely shocking. The room became very quiet. Everyone was waiting to hear what she would say next. "The Zephyrians are not really warriors," Dr. Wright continued. "They used to be farmers, engineers, and artists. Their whole species was conquered and changed into soldiers by another alien race called the Dominators. About 3,000 years ago, a man named Robert Taylor, who ran the colony's military, stood up quickly. Are you saying they were forced to become killers?" Dr. Wright nodded sadly. "The Dominators changed their brains and their DNA. They made it impossible for Zephyrians to disobey orders or stop fighting. The Zephyrians have been spreading across the galaxy, conquering world after world because they literally cannot stop themselves. They are slaves, not conquerors." Captain Santos spoke from the back of the room. "But what does this have to do with saving us?" "Earth is still gone and they are still trying to kill us," Dr. Wright smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Because humans are the first species the Zephyrians have met that fights back with the same kind of violence that was programmed into them. We are forcing them to see what they have become, and some of them are starting to remember who they used to be." She showed new pictures of brain scans on her device. 3 Zephyrian soldiers on Earth began showing changes in their brains after fighting human forces for several weeks. Dr. Chen believed that our refusal to surrender and our willingness to fight to the death might be breaking their mental programming. Paul Johnson stood up slowly. "Are you saying we might be able to turn some of them to our side?" "I am saying that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our technology," Dr. Wright replied. "It is our complete refusal to give up even when we know we cannot win. And that refusal might be exactly what the galaxy needs to break a 3,000-year-old cycle of conquest and death." The meeting room erupted in voices as everyone started talking at once. Some people were excited while others were afraid. The idea that they might be able to save the Zephyrians instead of just fighting them was almost too much to believe. Dr. Wright raised her hand to get everyone quiet again. There is more you need to know. The Dominators who created this mess are gone. They have been extinct for over 1,000 years. The Zephyrians are carrying out the orders of dead masters. They are conquering planets for people who no longer exist. Colonel Frank Miller, the head of colony security, shook his head. How is that even possible? The programming was made to last forever, Dr. Wright explained. The Dominators wanted to make sure their conquest of the galaxy would continue, even if something happened to them. They succeeded better than they probably imagined. Captain Santos asked the question everyone was thinking. So how do we break this programming? How do we free them? Dr. Wright looked around the room at all the worried faces. We do what humans do best. We fight in ways that make no sense. We refuse to follow the rules. We show them that the impossible is possible. She explained more about what Dr. Chen had discovered. Human warfare is chaotic and emotional. We fight with passion instead of logic. We do things that should not work but somehow do. The Zephyrian programming was designed to counter organized resistance from civilized species. But humans are not civilized when we fight. We are wild and unpredictable. Paul Johnson nodded slowly. So every time we do something crazy in battle, we might be helping to free their minds. Exactly, Dr. Wright said. Every suicide charge that somehow succeeds, every impossible rescue, every time a wounded soldier keeps fighting when he should be dead. All of these things show the Zephyrians that the rules they have lived by for 3,000 years are lies. The room was quiet again as everyone thought about what this meant. They were not just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were fighting to free an entire species from mental slavery. Colonel Miller stood up. Doctor, what do you need from us to make this work? Dr. Wright looked at each person in the room. I need you to spread this information to every human colony and ship in the galaxy. And I need you to change how we fight. We need to engage the Zephyrians in the most chaotic emotional battles possible. We need to show them what it means to be truly free. As the meeting ended, everyone knew their war had just become something much bigger than survival. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before in galactic history. They were going to try to free the minds of their enemies. 6 months had passed since Earth burned, and the war had taken a very strange turn. On the mining colony called New Haven, something was happening that nobody had ever seen before. Lieutenant Kevin Murphy was hiding behind concrete blocks as bright energy weapons lit up the main street of the town. But this time, not all the energy blasts were coming from Zephyrian guns. Some were coming from Zephyrians who were fighting against their own people. Kevin could not believe what he was seeing. 3 Zephyrian soldiers were fighting alongside the human defenders against a group of other Zephyrians. The defector aliens moved differently than the others. They seemed more alive somehow, less like machines following orders. Contact confirmed, said Sergeant Rachel Davis through the radio from her position near the communication building. We have 3 Zephyrian soldiers fighting with us against their own fleet. The defectors had arrived 2 days ago in a small damaged ship. Their leader was a Zephyrian who called himself Vex Prime 7. Through a basic translation machine, he had given the humans a message that changed everything about the war. The harmony song is breaking, the alien had said in broken English. We remember the before time. Help us remember how to be free. Kevin watched as one of the defector Zephyrians moved around the side of a building to attack a group of regular Zephyrian soldiers. The defector's movements were smooth and creative. He was not just following programmed battle tactics anymore. He was thinking for himself and making his own choices. Murphy, get to the command bunker now, came Commander Lisa Parker's voice over the radio. We are getting more defector signals from other places in this part of space. Kevin ran through the burning streets, jumping over broken concrete and dodging energy blasts. Smoke filled the air and made it hard to breathe. When he reached the underground command center, he found Commander Parker talking to leaders from other human colonies through video screens. What is happening out there? Kevin asked as he caught his breath. It is spreading faster than we ever hoped, Commander Parker said with amazement in her voice. 18 different colonies are reporting Zephyrian defectors. They are calling it the Great Awakening. Every time our people refuse to give up, every time we show them that fighting for freedom is possible, more of them start to remember their original nature. On the main screen, recordings of Zephyrian communications played with computer translations. Dr. Wright's voice came through explaining what the patterns meant. The changes are the same in all defector groups, Dr. Wright said from her new research base. They're developing individual names instead of numbers. They are creating art and music. Most importantly, they are learning to question orders from their commanders. Kevin looked at the battle information on other screens. Reports were coming in from colonies across human space. The same thing was happening everywhere. Zephyrians were breaking free from their mental programming and joining the human resistance. But here is the most incredible part. Dr. Wright continued on the video link. The human way of fighting is not just inspiring them. It is actually changing their brain chemistry. Our guerrilla tactics, our absolute refusal to accept defeat, our willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom, all of this is rewiring their neural pathways. We are accidentally undoing 3,000 years of mental conditioning just by being ourselves. Kevin shook his head in wonder. So what happens now? Do we have enough defectors to make a difference? Commander Parker pointed to a tactical map on the wall. Look at this. Red dots are loyal Zephyrian forces. Blue dots are human colonies. Green dots are defector Zephyrian groups. Kevin studied the map and his eyes widened. There were almost as many green dots as red ones. This is amazing. How many have switched sides? Over 40% of the Zephyrian fleet in this sector has defected, Commander Parker said. And the number is growing every day. But the Loyalist commanders are starting to realize what is happening. They are pulling back to regroup and plan a counterattack. Through the bunker's thick walls, Kevin could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. The fighting had been going on for 6 hours and both sides were running low on ammunition and energy. But something was different about this battle. The humans were not just trying to survive anymore. They were trying to save their enemies too. A new voice came over the radio. It was Vex Prime 7, the defector leader. His English was getting better every day as he learned to think more freely. Human Commander Parker, the alien said, my people who still serve the old masters are retreating to their ships. They will call for reinforcements from the core worlds. You must prepare for a much larger battle. Commander Parker activated her microphone. Vex Prime 7, how many more of your people might be ready to break free? There was a pause before the alien answered. Hard to know. The harmony song that controls us is strong, but your people's chaos fighting creates cracks in the programming. Every impossible thing you do makes the cracks bigger. Kevin understood what this meant. The more illogical and desperate the human tactics became, the more effective they were at breaking Zephyrian minds. Humanity's greatest weakness, their tendency to do stupid, brave things that should not work, had become their greatest strength. Commander, I have an idea, Kevin said. What if we deliberately plan the most chaotic emotional battles possible? What if we use tactics that make no sense but somehow succeed? Commander Parker smiled. Kevin, I think you just described every human military victory in history. The difference is now we know why it works. Over the next several hours, reports continued to come in from across human space. The pattern was always the same. Human defenders would fight in ways that seemed random and desperate. Zephyrian soldiers would witness impossible acts of courage and sacrifice, and then something would click in their alien minds, breaking through the ancient programming. As the sun set over New Haven, Kevin looked out at the battlefield where humans and defector Zephyrians were working together to treat the wounded from both sides. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just 6 months ago. You know what this means? Kevin said to Commander Parker as they watched the unlikely allies caring for each other. What? She asked. It means we are not just fighting a war anymore, Kevin replied. We are leading a revolution that spans the entire galaxy. And the best part is we are winning just by being human. Commander Parker nodded as she watched a human medic teaching a defector Zephyrian how to bandage wounds. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when humanity refuses to give up. And I think they are going to be very surprised. The rebellion had grown far beyond what anyone thought was possible. What started as small groups of defectors had become a galaxy-wide revolution. Colonel Danny Thompson stood on the bridge of a huge Zephyrian warship that his forces had captured 3 weeks ago. The ship used to be called Harmony's End, but now the humans had renamed it Freedom's Dawn. Reports were coming in from all over occupied space, and the news was incredible. Colonel Thompson could hardly believe what he was reading on the screens around him. 73% of the Zephyrian fleet is now fighting against their old commanders. said intelligence officer Nicole Adams as she read from her computer. The Loyalist forces are running away to their homeworlds in the center of the galaxy. Standing next to Colonel Thompson was his strangest ally, a Zephyrian who now called himself Alex. He had chosen a human name to show that he was free from his old programming. Alex used to be Fleet Commander Prime 12, responsible for destroying dozens of worlds and killing millions of people. Now he led the biggest group of defector ships in the galaxy. "The change spreads like water through stone," Alex said through his translation device. His voice sounded almost human now instead of mechanical. "Every world where humans resist, more of my people remember the Song of Choice." Dr. Wright's research had finally revealed the full truth about what the Dominators had done. The Zephyrians were not just soldiers. They were living weapons designed to spread conquest across the entire galaxy, until every world was under Dominator control. But the Dominators had made one big mistake when they created their programming. Human warfare is chaotic, emotional, and completely unpredictable, Dr. Wright explained during a strategy meeting with all the rebellion leaders. The Zephyrian programming was designed to fight against logical, organized resistance from civilized species. But humans do not fight in civilized ways. We fight with passion, with desperate creativity, with complete disregard for the odds. That unpredictability is what breaks their mental chains. Colonel Thompson nodded to Lieutenant Frank Miller, his communications officer. "Send the message to all human colonies. Operation Mindbreak starts now." Operation Mindbreak was humanity's master plan. Instead of trying to defeat the Zephyrians with better weapons or tactics, they would deliberately fight the most chaotic, emotional battles possible. Human forces would use strategies that made no logical sense but somehow worked anyway. The plan was to have human soldiers do things like suicide charges that succeeded against impossible odds. They would rescue civilians from situations where rescue should be impossible. Wounded soldiers would keep fighting long after they should have died. Every time humans did something the programming said was impossible, it would show the Zephyrians that the rules they had lived by for 3,000 years were lies. Every time we do something that should not work but does work anyway, we prove to them that freedom is possible. Colonel Thompson had explained to his officers. We show them that the voice in their heads telling them what they can and cannot do is wrong. Alex watched the tactical displays with growing amazement as reports came in from battles across the galaxy. "Your people fight like the star winds themselves. No pattern, no way to predict what you will do next, only the will to be free. It is beautiful and terrifying at the same time." The results of Operation Mindbreak were beyond anything they had hoped for. As reports came in of more Zephyrian fleets switching sides, Colonel Thompson realized they were seeing something that had never happened in galactic history. Not just the liberation of one species, but the end of a conquest that had lasted for thousands of years. "Sir," reported Nicole Adams, her voice filled with wonder, "we are getting a transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. The planetary government has just declared independence from the Hierarchy Command." This was the biggest news yet. The Zephyrian homeworld had been the center of their empire for 3 millennia. If even they were rebelling, then the ancient programming was truly broken. Colonel Thompson smiled as he thought about how far they had come. "Send a reply to the homeworld. Tell them welcome to the rebellion." But the war was not over yet. Intelligence reports showed that the remaining Loyalist forces were gathering at the old Dominator capital world in the center of the galaxy. They were planning one final assault to try to retake control of their empire. "The Loyalists still have about 25% of the original fleet," Alex reported as he studied the tactical information. "They are being led by the High Command, the original Zephyrians who were converted first by the Dominators. Their programming is the strongest and oldest." Dr. Wright's voice came through the communication system from her research ship. "The High Command Zephyrians will be much harder to free. They have been under mental control for the longest time. Their programming has had 3,000 years to become deeper and stronger." Colonel Thompson looked at the star charts showing where the Loyalist forces were gathering. "How many ships do we have that can fight them?" "Between human and defector forces, we have about 60% more ships than they do," Lieutenant Miller reported. "But their ships are bigger and more heavily armed, and they will fight to the death because they literally cannot surrender." Alex moved closer to the tactical display. "There is something else you must know about the High Command. They have a weapon that the regular fleet does not. It is called the Harmony Enforcer. It can force defector Zephyrians back under mental control from a distance. This changed everything. If the Loyalists could turn the defectors back into slaves during the battle, then the rebellion would be doomed. How do we fight against something like that? Nicole Adams asked. Dr. Wright's voice came through the speakers again. The same way we have been fighting all along. With chaos and unpredictability, the Harmony Enforcer works by imposing order and logic on Zephyrian minds, but it cannot work on minds that are thinking in completely illogical ways. Colonel Thompson understood what she meant. So we need to make this final battle the most chaotic, emotional, and illogical fight in galactic history. Alex nodded slowly. We need to show every Zephyrian in that final fleet that following orders leads to death, but choosing freedom leads to life. As Colonel Thompson looked at the assembled fleet of human and defector ships preparing for the final battle, he knew they were about to attempt something impossible. They were going to fight not just for victory but for the souls of their enemies. All ships prepare for the jump to hyperspace, Colonel Thompson announced. We are going to end a 3,000-year-old nightmare and show the galaxy what it means to be truly free. 2 years had passed since Earth died and the galaxy was now completely different. Admiral Jake Morrison, who had been promoted after his important work in the early resistance, stood in the observation room of a new space station called Liberty Prime. The station was orbiting the world that used to be the capital of the Zephyrian Empire. The sight in front of him would have been impossible to imagine during those dark days after Earth was destroyed. Human and Zephyrian ships moved together in perfect harmony, not as conquerors and slaves, but as friends working to rebuild what had been torn apart by 3,000 years of programmed war. The restoration projects are ahead of schedule on 17 worlds, reported Captain Susan Clark, his chief assistant. The Zephyrian Council is asking for human advisors to help them build their new democratic government. Admiral Morrison nodded, still amazed by how completely everything had changed. The Zephyrians, now free from their mental programming, had proven to be exactly what Dr. Chen had guessed they would be. They were a peaceful, creative species with an incredible ability for art, science, and cooperation. The final battle had been the most chaotic fight in galactic history. Human and defector forces had attacked the Loyalist fleet at the old Dominator capital, using tactics that made no sense at all. Ships had deliberately flown into enemy fire to save other ships. Soldiers had made suicide runs that somehow succeeded. The most impossible rescues had worked perfectly. The Harmony Enforcer weapon had tried to force the defector Zephyrians back under control, but it could not work on minds that were thinking in completely crazy ways. The more illogical the battle became, the more Loyalist Zephyrians broke free from their programming and joined the rebellion. And the investigation into the Dominators? Admiral Morrison asked. Dr. Wright, now head of the joint research program between humans and Zephyrians, joined them at the big window. We have confirmed they are extinct and have been dead for over 1,000 years. The Zephyrians were carrying out the orders of ghosts, conquering a galaxy for masters who no longer existed. Through the window, Admiral Morrison could see construction crews made up of both humans and Zephyrians working together. They were building something that had never existed before in galactic history. It was a memorial to all the worlds lost during the conquest, including Earth. But more than that, they were building a new kind of civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. Alex, who now served as the Zephyrian representative to the new Galactic Council, walked up to the group. His translation device had been replaced with a computer implant that let him speak perfect English. Admiral Morrison, I have news from the exploration fleets. Good news, I hope? Admiral Morrison asked. The best news possible, Alex replied, and his artificial voice was filled with something that could only be called joy. We have found them. Survivors from 17 different species that were conquered before. Hidden on worlds the hierarchy thought were too dangerous to live on. They kept their freedom alive in secret for thousands of years, waiting for this day to come. Admiral Morrison felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Earth was gone. Humanity's birth world was slowly healing but would never be the same. But the human spirit, that stubborn refusal to surrender that had broken the Zephyrian programming, lived on in ways the Dominators had never imagined possible. The memorial being built in space was not just for the dead, but for the living. Representatives from the survivor species had come to see what humans had accomplished. They wanted to understand how one small species had ended a conquest that had lasted for millennia. There is something else, Alex continued. The survivor species want to know how humans did it. How you broke mental programming that had controlled my people for 3,000 years. Dr. Wright laughed, a sound filled with both sadness and hope. Tell them the truth. We did not break their programming through superior technology or clever strategy. We broke it by being exactly what we have always been. A species too stubborn to know when we are beaten, too illogical to accept the impossible, and too human to ever stop fighting for what we believe in. Admiral Morrison looked out at the ships moving through space, carrying seeds and technology to restore dead worlds. They carried teachers to help freed species rebuild their lost cultures. They carried the message that had started it all, that freedom was worth any price, any sacrifice. The new Galactic Council was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of one species ruling over others, it was made up of representatives from dozens of different worlds working together. Humans held no special position of power, but their influence was felt everywhere. They had taught the galaxy that cooperation was stronger than domination. Earth's restoration had become a galaxy-wide project. Zephyrian scientists worked alongside human engineers to clean the poisoned atmosphere. Artists from 12 different species created beautiful gardens where cities had once burned. The planet would never be exactly as it was before, but it would be something new and wonderful. You know what I find most amazing? Captain Clark said as she watched the construction work. The Zephyrians are not trying to make up for what they did. They are not acting guilty or ashamed. They are just focused on building something better. Alex overheard this and nodded. Guilt and shame are tools of control. We spent 3,000 years being controlled. Now we choose to spend our time creating instead of destroying, helping instead of harming. This is what freedom means to us. Admiral Morrison thought about all the battles they had fought, all the friends they had lost, all the impossible things they had accomplished. Humanity had started the war with nothing but their refusal to surrender. They had ended it by teaching an entire galaxy what it meant to be free. The galaxy would never be the same again. New species were emerging from hiding, sharing technologies and cultures that had been lost for millennia. Trade routes were being established not for conquest but for mutual benefit. Children of different species were learning together in schools that taught cooperation instead of competition. Earth's last message had been more prophetic than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy had indeed gotten to know the other side of humanity, not just the warriors who fought and died on countless battlefields, but the dreamers who refused to let hope die, the builders who could see possibility in ruins, and the teachers who could show an entire galaxy what it meant to be truly free. In the end, humanity's greatest victory had not been won with weapons or tactics. It had been won by simply being human, in all the chaotic, illogical, beautiful ways that made them who they were. And in saving the galaxy from an ancient tyranny, they had discovered that the human spirit was more powerful than any programming, more enduring than any empire, and more transformative than any technology ever created.